Good evening, captive audience. This is Don Anderson and Sunny Danforth here, or 23 Days of Winning. Her name changes every week, so I have to look and see what it is. But I like her name no matter how she spells it. How you doing today, Sunny?
I am doing great. I'm doing great. It's cold outside, but it was a sunny, beautiful day. It was so pretty. The snow's all white and glistening and that, but I can't believe with everything that's going on at lightning speed, we are only 23 days into Trump's term.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. It might be cold outside, but it's hot in Washington, D.C.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Get
yeah.
the folks on the hot seat. And it's so funny to watch for once to watch them on defense. I was just watching just before our podcast here. Trump was doing a live, interview with the press, and I guess he met with Putin today too. That's a whole nother thing. I didn't get a chance to listen to what the actual commentary was, but just to see a president engaged, answering questions, no notes. And the reporters, nobody's asking stupid asinine attack dog questions. I mean, they have trained the pack. That is that's a huge accomplishment. It looked sane, like a regular press conference, like the kind we used to see when we were kids. It's amazing.
It is amazing. And I had an opportunity to watch, it was at 1 o'clock our time today. No, it was 1 o'clock Eastern, I guess. Carolyn Levitt's press conference. And,
Mhm.
the first person she called on, she's only 27 years old and she
Mhm.
is so smart and is articulate. But the first person she called on, I think his name is Steve Pavlovsky. He's the
Mhm.
CEO of Rumble.
Mhm.
She says, "Why don't you open it up for us tonight, Steve? Today, Steve." And he
Let's just
read a
talk.
deal. Here you have Rumble,
Mhm.
the CEO of Rumble in, and he makes a statement thanking them for welcoming in the alternatives, right? I don't know that he used that term. I'm paraphrasing. And then he goes and asks an intelligent question. And they have shook up, as she said they were going to do, the press conferences and who has access and all of that. And it was just refreshing to see. She came out with just, it looked like less than 10 sheets of paper. She
Mhm.
didn't come out with a notebook. And
No.
she read some stuff and
Mhm.
she killed it.
It's
It is so transparent, it's wonderful.
and to a person, every single person in the cabinet is
Yeah.
doing that. Like no notes or very little notes, free form, ask the question. And here's the other thing I love. They are not backing down. We finally have a Republican Party that understands you are dealing with communists. You cannot treat them nice. You cannot be polite. You cannot take two steps forward. There's no give and take. You have to like mow them down. Uh,
Yeah.
you know, you do. I mean, because that's how they respond. You give an inch, they're taking 5 miles, and we're already 5 miles behind. So I love the fact that these people are professionally engaged, and they're on the offense in a professional way. They're not being nasty. They're not calling names. They're just providing evidence. And my goodness, what evidence is there? What evidence is there? Which is a great way to like kind of launch in the discussion. There's so many things I don't know where to start, by the way. So I'm just going to randomly select one. You may have heard kid's name is Mark Fogel. I say kid because anybody under 50 is a kid now. That's what happens when you get old. And and Mark Fogel, if you recall, he's the school teacher who was teaching English in Russia, and
Mhm.
uh, and he was on medical marijuana. Um, Definitely his mistake. He had a legal prescription for medical marijuana, and I think it was Tennessee. Goes to the Soviet Union, has like a minor amount, and obviously this is a political move. Putin's government arrests him. And he's been there for like 4 years in the basement with Biden making no effort to get him out. They sentenced him to like, I think, 15 years, right? I mean, I can't imagine the hopelessness of something like that. And
Yeah.
your own government doing nothing for you. Meanwhile, at the same time, Brittany Griner, and for those of you who don't know who she is, she's the black LGBTQ, name your alphabet code WNBA basketball player who goes to Russia, gets busted. I can't remember how much marijuana she had on her, but she too was no matter what we think of her, another political grab, and they grabbed her. The Biden administration bent over backwards to get her out, and they traded her for one of the largest, I think, arms dealers in the world, right? So,
Yes.
and Trump gets Mark Fogel out in 20 days for nothing, by the way.
Yeah.
Biden gets out someone who hates the United States, kneeled on the flag, and expends huge capital to get her back. And that is another one of those things. That's just an example of just, if you want to see an example of how the Democratic Party operates, that's it. It's all about being divisive. So we're going to leave the white guy there to fester in the prison. Why? Because he has no political value to them. But the black lesbian, she's got a ton of political value to them. So we'll get her out. And in the course of doing that, the effort is to divide the country. And boy, if there's anything that they've done a great job of over the last 4 years, it's been that. And that particular issue is just a perfect example of it. And let me stop. I just used up a bunch of oxygen talking about that one, because I've been mad about that one ever since it happened. But
You know, I'm with you, Don. Totally, totally with you. When Joyner was released, when that whole thing was negotiated, that was a lot of capital. But now I just posted a story from the Epoch Times that Trump has now secured 2 others from prison in Belarus, as well. So this is wonderful what he's doing. And so the U.S. State Department and let's see, 2 of the individuals, including the U.S. resident, requested their names and identifying information be withheld. One of them is Andriy Kuznetsov. I don't know. A journalist in Belarus working for Radio Liberty was charged in 2022 with allegedly establishing an extremist group, Kuznetsov. I don't know how you say his last name. It's one of those. Mm-hmm. And but anyway, Trump, the bottom line is Trump he wants nobody left behind. And he wants any American prisoner to be brought home. And so Andrew here is going to be, coming home. And he thanked, apparently, Andrew, his wife, and their 2 kids, 2 young children, said in a statement together, after more than 3 years apart, his family's together, and he thanks President Trump for that.
That is amazing. It's so great to actually have a statesman back in the White House. Somebody who can pick up the phone, have a conversation, has the power, knows how to use the power, knows how to use the pen, knows how to use the phone, knows how to negotiate. And we just haven't seen it in so long.
No.
And 4 years of Biden is like 20 years of anybody else. So that doesn't help either.
But the other side didn't care. If they really cared, and that's where, it's still hard for me to realize that there are people in our government that don't give a damn about the United States. They want to see it torn down. They want to see a change for globalists. But that is the reality. And so when we see, you have to trust them by their works.
Oh, and Suni, it's worse than don't care. They're doing it on purpose. They want to destroy and divide. When you have a government agency like FEMA go buy homes because they have a Trump sign on the front and send out a message, don't help these people because you have a Trump sign in the front.
Yes.
That's like unbelievable. I mean, there's people in North Carolina, they're just now getting around to. They didn't get around to them until Trump got in office. And now I just saw something, they've finally gotten around to them. And Trump's been in office like 20 days, and now those people are getting help. They got completely ignored during the Biden administration. Why? Because they're likely to be conservatives, to be blunt. And that's how communists operate. That's how they operate. We saw what they did with the J6. We saw what they did with Christians who were peacefully protesting, and they threw them in prison and then refused to let them out until they had to be forced to refuse them out just recently. And we're talking in many cases, retirees, some of them with health issues, older women in literally in leg irons like the Civil
Yes.
War. That
Yes.
was all on purpose to send a message to the rest of the population. If you don't do what we tell you to do, then this is what you're going to be next. That was what they were trying to do.
Very true.
Well, so we dodged a bullet.
A
Moving on
huge
to
bullet, a cannonball,
yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, a cannonball.
not
A
just a
total
little
cannonball.
bullet, a cannonball.
And I couldn't, and we would be remiss if we didn't talk about at least some of the results of this Doge stuff, because it's laugh out loud stuff. It's so bad that
Yeah.
only the government can do it. I mean, literally, no human being could do this stuff. Only a government entity could do things this stupid. And one of them, I have to refer to uh, uh, the mine shaft. I'm not sure if you all have heard about this mine shaft. So, in an effort to get all these people an opportunity to retire, I can't remember the department of the government that does this, but they basically said they couldn't retire people they were limited in terms of the rate at which they could retire people because they couldn't get to their records fast enough. Why couldn't get their records fast enough? Because the records were stored in the mine shaft, literally a mine shaft on physical pieces of paper. And the rate at which they could recover the records was based on the elevator, which could only go up and down the mine shaft at an X rate per amount of time. So that was preventing the government from doing its job. You can't, you just, if I had hair, I would pull it out. It's 2025. These people haven't even figured out microfiche. I mean,
Right.
it's like incredible. But
Well,
again,
there you go. And we've got people that are pretty young that don't even know what that is, but we
yeah,
do, Don.
right. I guess, yeah, I better clarify what microfiche is. No, that would take too long.
So Doge says that they have saved more than 3.4 billion so far. And I'm reading this is today's numbers from the Epoch Times. They've made over 3.4 billion in cuts so far, and many cuts have been made in the Department of Education. I mean, it is astonishing. I do have a list of some things here. We saved $30 million counseling 12 consulting contracts with the General Services Administration and Department of Education. 500,000 cut political subscriptions to NASA. 26 million counseled 20 consulting contracts on strategic communication and executive coaching.
Executive coaching. Well, of course, you probably left out the 50,000 condoms to Afghanistan, but it's a
Right.
family channel.
And so let's see, $1 million, just $1 million was terminated Social Security Administration contract for the Gender X initiative marker. $1 billion counseled 104 DEI related contracts. 3 million counseled 12 underutilized leases. Some of this is just common sense. Counseled underutilized leases. This is good.
Oh no, yeah.
A lot of
I
this is
saw
common
something
sense.
where there was like, yeah, they're making payments on things where the contract ended like 10 years ago, and they're still making the payments.
Yes. Yeah, in fact, they were funding things. Some of it was 40 years old and didn't even exist, and they were still funding it. And I had an opportunity to listen to Musk talk, and when he was in the Oval Office with Trump, and of course, little X, he's 4 years old. He's so darn cute. And Musk was saying about how some of these things, how do you fund something that's not even a line item anymore? And then speaking of line items, he says There's basic treasury in any business. Their basic accounting practices were not being followed, that they don't have any description of what that check was for. They haven't, basically a blank check.
And see, these are the reasons why the founders, they knew this would happen. These are reasons why you want small government. I think it's a funny
Yeah.
thing. I was watching, I love watching old stuff. So I was watching Milton Friedman and Thomas Sowell talking about the various departments that needed to be cut. This is like a 40-year-old video. You can find this on YouTube. And it's like today. They were going down the list. Oh, I'd cut transportation. I would cut education. I would cut, and then it's going down the list. And we're thinking, you guys are like, and that was 40 years ago. They were talking about how disastrous these things were and would become. And it's truly stunning because there's not in anybody's self-interest for it to be. There's no reward if you do good. There's no punishment if you do bad. That's a
Right.
recipe for disaster. And for these
Right.
reasons, you got to think to yourself, how much of this stuff can be privatized? I know in Washington State, for example, they privatized it. It's one of the few things they did in the state that was decent. And the service is fantastic. You go to DMV now, you get helped and you're out of there. I mean, it's not the national joke that it is everywhere else.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, they privatized it. I mean, and you think, why is that a function of government? I mean, that's got to be the question for every single thing, which makes you think about, like, a lot of people are pissing and moaning because of some of the things like food relief, for example, that USAID allegedly. Hey, I have no doubt that buried deep within there were some things that they were doing that was good. In fact, I heard Trump just say they found so far that 3 out of 200 things are useful. Now get your head around that. 3 out of 200. That's
Wow.
1.5%. So the Democrats are like, well, we should save it then. We might lose the 1.5%.
Right.
But my point in saying that is things like relief, that should be privatized. If you want to help, a starving kid in Africa, then you help them, or donate it to a private organization that does that, or form a group. And we have tons of groups that do that stuff, and
Yes.
they'll do it. And 85 or 90% of the money will actually get to the recipient,
Yes.
versus when the government does it, and like 20% of it gets to the recipient if it isn't doing something, and the rest of it goes to funding the destabilization of their government, right?
Like Samaritan's Purse.
Yes. Yeah.
There are very good organizations out there that 5% is overhead and the rest of the money goes for what they're doing, and actually truly helping people.
Yeah.
And Samaritan's Purse actually does a lot of things all over the world, not just here in the United States.
Oh, yeah.
Thank God they showed up in North Carolina.
Right. And speaking of North Carolina, I just saw this. The Secretary of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, announced that in 5 days, 80% of open FEMA requests have been resolved. In 5 days. Now, how long did Biden have with this? This is where you want to say, WTF? Where the heck? What have they been doing? And these same
Yeah.
stats apply to everything else. You look at the border. How much have crossings dropped in like 20 days?
Oh yeah, they had effect on the crossings. I heard it was less than 200 gotaways a day. Less than 200. And it used to be a lot more than that. And Homan says, we got to get that number down. Those are the gotaways. And they know because of technology, they can see them, but they can't get to them.
Mhm.
And the border is so closed. All of it is possible. And there wasn't any new laws on the books
Mhm.
made. They, like DOGE was an agency that Obama made that was just renamed
Mhm.
and reutilized, and we're going to have it do what it ought to be doing. And just like immigration, it's just applying the laws on the books, and what Trump, did, like the Remain in Mexico.
Mhm.
So it's
That's
so refreshing. It's so refreshing seeing our things done properly, taking care of Americans, and taking care of the people that have been trying to come into the United States. It's so disheartening for them thinking that they're going to leave their country and come here and just get in. I feel
It
for
was,
those people. They've been used as pawns.
yeah. Well, it was rational for them because our own government encouraged it. The Democratic Party has
Well,
gotten
yeah,
away with it for years because Republicans have been softies and afraid to get called names, be afraid to get called racist, afraid to get
yeah.
called misogynistic, afraid to get called whatever name you want to be called. And you got to get over that. They're going to call you that no matter what. So if you're going to save the country and save your own life, by the way, you're going to have to get used to being called names. That's just the way it is. And I saw this morning the newest talking point now on the national news is a constitutional crisis. Have you heard that? Now
Oh,
everything's a
yeah.
constitutional crisis. What the heck do they think we've been in for the last 5 years? But it's a constant. So every time that we want to enforce the law, it's a constitutional crisis.
Yeah.
These leftists are just amazing. But the
And
more they do it, the better off they make it for us because they're putting a spotlight on things that this country voted for once. So they're out there protesting and blocking freeways in Los Angeles, for example, because we're stopping illegal aliens who are murderers. By the way, they're
yes,
defending that.
yes,
I
yes.
said, let them keep doing that. You keep defending that. Let's see how many votes that gets you.
That's right, because everything that they're doing and screaming about, you know, oh, we can't have all these cuts. Well, yeah, that's because they're for the fraud. They're for the money. This is how they're, Elon says, how should we investigate Nancy Pelosi that he didn't say, he said, she makes, let's say 200,000 a year, but she's worth, 300 million. Yes, her husband has a job, but should we look at just how that happened?
Oh,
Well, what we
I've
have
heard
to do, we do
I've
have
heard
to
they're
change.
actually opening an investigation of that stuff. Congress people who have gotten exorbitantly wealthy that doesn't make sense, which they should do. And when I was in the military, if you were a military officer, that was instant cause for investigation.
Yeah.
So it's totally up to
Yeah, and they should look into it. We need to have legislation that stops the insider trading.
you.
We need to have legislation to stop the legalized bribery. I mean, that's what lobbyists are, is legalized bribery. They
Mhm.
pay you and bribe you. Um, some of the things that I think Trump has had to sign as executive order, I feel the Congress should codify it
Mhm.
so that nobody else, I say nobody else can do this again, but yet look, we had the laws on the books to that made the illegals illegal. And yet Biden kept telling the people, well, the border's closed. The hell it was.
Mhm.
It wasn't staffed, it wasn't funded to do what they're doing. We're going to pay the military whether they're playing tiddlywinks or they're guarding the border. The pay's the same,
Mhm.
and I'm glad to have them use it.
Mhm. Well, we literally were. It's an invasion. That's what it
Yes,
is. That's what the
yes.
Department of Defense is supposed to do is prevent us from being invaded. It was a conduit for the Chinese to send fentanyl in this country to destroy the young, and it was highly effective. What was it, 70,000 a year getting killed by fentanyl? Um, and the Mexican drug cartels are making a fortune, sending stuff across our border. And then they're
Mhm.
sending, I can't remember how many millions into the country. Like I think it was 12 million over the last 4 years. And what do we get in exchange? They send 60 billion back back to their own countrymen. Don't pay taxes. We pay their medical care. What are we getting out of this? It's in a budget surplus of like, I can't remember what the number was, some crazy number, 60 billion or something, right? To hollow out our industrial base so young people can't get jobs. I love the fact that we finally have a president and an administration that's standing up for this. It's America first. And in reality, the cool thing about the America first is actually good for Mexico because what we've done is propped up their really bad governance. So the release valve for them has been the United States. If they had to handle their own population that's coming here, those people will put a stop to it at some point. So they don't have
True.
to leave your country. Who wants to leave their country, by the way? Think how bad it would have to be for you to go to a foreign land where you don't even speak the language. Um, Must be bad.
You're absolutely right. You know, nobody's trying to just go to Mexico or Guatemala or Venezuela or Cuba. You know, they're not trying to get in there because they don't have the social structure that we have of helping people. Not as a way, it's not supposed to be a way of life, but as a way of helping a person out during a hard time.
Mhm.
Um, and so many countries, in fact, not very many countries in the world, even have that type of social structure at all. And I've heard the argument, well, we're already socialist. Why should we fight it? The heck we are. We
Okay.
have programs that help people, you know, just as a temporary, should only be temporary. And we're such a generous nation. I
Mhm.
think it's wonderful. You know, I can remember back quite young that I was on unemployment for about 6 months.
Mhm.
And so, but you know, it was just a temporary thing.
Mhm.
Well, some things got straightened out. I think it's maybe more like 4 months.
Mhm.
And then back on my feet.
Mhm.
But how nice it was to have those types of helps where before we did have that type of thing in our country, you know, it was we relied only on family or friends or you know to help us, and that's the way other countries are. If you are down on your luck and you don't have anybody to help you, you're on the street and you're just begging. And I've been in many countries that there are a lot of people
Mhm.
really poor and begging for help. Their governments are not helping them.
And people, and someone who would make the argument that we're already socialists, that's a person who's historically ignorant because socialism only runs in one country, in one direction. That's more of it. And the more of it you do, the less capable your country will become until finally you're full out communist. The percentage you'll pay in taxes will keep going up and up and up. The degree of freedom you have will keep going down and down and down. So that is a really historically ignorant question. And just a cursory glance at the history of what happens to countries who keep going down that sliding scale. And the best way to measure it is by what percentage of your income are you paying in taxes? What percentage of the national income is going out in taxes? When you
Yeah.
start having upwards of 30 and 40 and 50% of your population work for the government, well, who's paying for that? At some point, is this common sense? You can't pay for that.
No.
Um,
No, and that's something that here in Oregon, I saw a story. I don't have it here anymore, but I saw a story that was in Oregon. The governor, they lost. We've lost in Oregon over 3,000 um, jobs, but the government created 700.
yeah. So how does the government create a job? It's not even logical. Um, but
Right.
people have grown so used to paying taxes, they've stopped thinking that's their money. If you had to write a check every month, you would not be thinking that way. They're taking your
Yes.
money away from you and using it in a way that they see is in their best interest. The best person who can make the best decision about your money is you. Who knows
Right.
you better than you? It's nobody else's business as long as it's legal. Um, but that's not how the communists, that's not how the leftist thinks. They think the rest of are dumb, stupid, deplorables, and therefore you have to be led around by the nose. At its essence, that's the problem. That's what the leadership class thinks on the left, and I think conservatives are finally figuring this out. Well, I should take that back. I think folks who listen to the show already knew it. So this gets into those percentages of the population, right? That bottom
Right.
30% that you can't convince, they're like they're mind brain dead, nothing you can do for them. It's that next 40 or 50% that you got to convince. The top 30% already get it, right? And increasingly we're getting them. Now, I hate to say this, not because we're so persuasive, but because they got punched in the face. you know,
Yeah. And
that's what
so
happened.
let me add, I found that story actually, and it is the December gains were largest in healthcare and social assistance of 1,900 jobs, and government was 700. But the jobs they lost was in hospitality, manufacturing, financial activities, and retail trade. 3,700 jobs lost in those. And yeah, right. The governor, how does government make 700 jobs?
And three of
It's
those four.
only by growing government, bureaucracy.
Interestingly, I think it's an interesting thing. Three of the four categories you mentioned are the categories where typically people get their start in life and grow into their
Yes.
career. I think you said retail. Was it manufacturing?
Manufacturing
Right.
and yeah, and
So what?
hospitality.
Yep. So what we do is we destroy the job creating machine for
Mhm.
those in the lower socioeconomic classes, put them on the government dole, which is exactly where the Democratic Party wants them to be. This is all strategic. This is not an accident. This is what they want.
Yeah, it's
Um,
true.
the, the educational system's an absolute disaster. That's strategic on purpose too, because you get out, you can't read and write. Guess what? You can't get a job, and you certainly can't get a job that pays you $20 an hour. They raised the minimum wage to the point where you have to bring a certain amount of skills to be worth $20 an hour. If you can't read and write, you're not worth $20 an hour. So now the unemployment rate amongst Black teenagers, for example, is like 50%. Well, that's the reason why. We give them an educational system that destroys them so they can't get a job. Then we raise the minimum wage so high that they can't get a job. And the same thing is true of poor whites in rural areas as well. So we just like destroy that part of the population, get them on the dole, and hopefully they'll vote for Democrats. That's the strategy.
Well, that's right. But we're 23 days into cutting that type of thing. Thank God with Trump and everybody he's putting in. Today, Tulsi Gabbard was confirmed. And Thursday, I believe Cash Patel. No, maybe it's RFK. RFK. One of those two is supposed to be Thursday. Sorry, I don't know who. I've been working on taxes all day.
That should make you angry by itself.
Oh yeah, hell yeah! I've been actually not just all day for several
You
days.
put away the knives.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you the great thing about someone like Tulsi Gabbard and a number of these appointees, I think Cash Patel is another one, they were victimized by the very departments that they're heading. I mean, it's like such poetic justice. I mean, this woman will go to the airport. Think about how obnoxious, how immoral this is, that organization actually put her on a fly list. So whenever she go to the airport, she had to get shook down. I mean, how in your face is that? But that is the morality of the people that were running those departments. And it's just so awesome to see. Guess what? Now you're reporting to her. So
Yes, and she will get to see who, because she had requested, who put me, how did I get on this no-fly list? Now she's going to find out.
yeah.
And I'll tell you, it's clean house, just clean house. There are people that are there's in fact I was reading a story yesterday that and I think even Elon Musk had said it, there's a lot of really good people working in our government that have not been allowed to do the work properly. Imagine working in the Treasury and everybody had to say yes. They had to just push through everything, and now they're going to have the ability to say no, this is not good for the people. We have to put the common sense back into running our government, thinning out the positions. We can do it with less.
See, here's what I suspect has happened because I know this and I saw this on a report about what they did in the military. So, and I've seen this in the private sector as well. So you'll get a cadre of people who think the same way, and they have their own buddies, and they only promote those people. So if you don't look like this, feel like this, think like this, know this person, you don't get the promotion. I don't care. It has nothing to do with how good you are, or any of that. So what you have is probably a cadre of people who are really decent, led by a pack of like wolves. And I would not doubt for 1 second that that's what you see at any of these alphabet soup organizations. You're not getting promoted unless you kiss the ring. Unless you are a member of Mordor, you're not getting, unless you kiss Sauron's ring, you don't get to go to Mordor. And I think that's largely what you have. So the executive suite in all of these places is the first place where you got a clean house. What's that saying? I can't remember who said it, but maybe it was Nixon, but personnel is policy. So if the place is rotten to the core, the first thing you got to do is you got to cut off the head.
Yeah.
And then you can begin to deal with the rest of it. There could be a case to be made in the case of the FBI, just abolishing the whole thing and starting over again. I mean, I don't know, but
Well, you know, we have so many different intelligence agencies, and there's a lot of redundancy here. And I don't know, but it's going to be interesting how this all shakes out. And I think there are agencies that need to be gotten rid of. Quite frankly, I'm tired of TSA.
Well, sure, yeah. Well, and this is the thing, the beginning of fixing some of these things. This is another thing I love about Trump and this administration. You're asking questions you couldn't ask before. And this is how a
Yeah,
business leader would look at it. Do we need that? Like NATO is, do we really need? And I'm not saying it should be abolished. What I'm saying is somebody should ask the question, do we need it anymore? And if we do need it, should it be structured the way it is? Is it useful to us? Why are we paying the most for it? We got two oceans. We're not the ones in danger.
right, right.
How about we cut ours down to about 5% of the total? You could even take the buildings and stuff in New York City and put them somewhere else because we don't really need it. Maybe you should move that to Berlin.
Yeah, exactly. I like Lori's response. They didn't need TSA for illegals. No, they didn't.
No.
They just let them walk in. You know, I've been on two planes
Hmm.
with illegals on the plane. One sitting right next to me, one
Hmm.
sitting across the aisle from me. And I knew it because I spoke Spanish to them.
Hmm.
And I saw them carrying a little plastic bag.
Hmm.
Little plastic bag.
Hmm.
You know, when the flight attendant came and asked him if he wants a soda, I let him know it's free. You can have a soda. You don't have to pay for it. You know, and
And hey, I'm more afraid of the people flying the airplanes than I am the.
no kidding. Speaking of that, did you know that a Navy jet crashed into San Diego Bay today?
See what I mean? I completely missed that.
I don't know. I didn't know it until I was looking at the Epic Times, and two pilots were recovered and are in stable condition. I don't know what happened,
So it'll
but
be yeah.
it happened today, this morning, while attempting to land at 10:15 this morning into San Diego Bay.
So another DEI case? Maybe not. I don't know. Hate to prejudge.
I don't know. The two military pilots aboard, it was a E8 18G Growler,
Mhm,
ejected and were
mhm,
quickly rescued
mhm.
by a sport fishing boat. So they were high enough they could eject, and so yeah.
Well, thank goodness
Golly.
there's no loss of life. But you think about the things that have happened
Yes.
that we've forgotten about. There's been so many of them. Remember the guy who drove through the barricade in New Orleans? It was
Oh
like during,
yeah.
like I think it was the college national championship or something, right? Complete DEI situation. I mean,
Yeah.
the barriers were down and in the garage someplace because they were still working on your biggest event of the year, Mardi Gras, and your barriers are in the garage
The
someplace.
police chief woman didn't even know they had them. Didn't he? I heard her. I heard her. She says, I didn't know we had those. And the
Yeah,
next day they were up. You know, it was
it,
because they had the game to play. Remember, they had to stop the
right.
football game they had to postpone it for a day. And then the damn things were up and they should have been in. And it was like the department was letting her fail
Mhm.
because somebody in the damn department knew they had them, but they
And you
were
know,
letting her fail, which actually ended up hurt the city. But you know what? Let it go. This
it,
DEI crap, I'm so over it.
it's
So
so,
over it.
and
Merit based
again,
everything.
remember I was saying people have to be punched in the face. It all sounds good. It's all political posturing. It's all making myself feel, pat myself on the back. Look at me, I'm a great person because I care about people who don't look like me. And then you get stuff like that. So how
Yeah.
many lives got lost from that event? Then you had the ship that ran into a bridge in what was that in Baltimore, and that's all been kind of swept and gotten kind of quiet, right? Well, whatever happened to that? Once again, I bet you dig, you're going to see the same kind of a thing. Or the train derailment in Ohio. My mind is blown
Oh
that
yeah.
that hasn't gotten any press. I mean, this is like a 3 Mile Island event, and people like the Democrat Party just want to forget it. Don't even go visit the people
But you
affected.
know, Pete Hegseth did.
Yes,
He went to everywhere there was a natural disaster and said, let them know you've not been forgotten.
or an
And
unnatural disaster, as it were.
yeah, yeah. So it is, yeah. Pat Finley, DEI didn't earn it. No shit.
but but they literally don't deal with it until it smacks them in the face, which takes me
No.
back to the whole LA thing. That is like the most epic colossal boomerang that I think I have ever seen. And without walking you all through the whole thing again, I saw, and it was probably about a week or so ago, so it's maybe old news, but they were interviewing the governor, and he's doing that silly shrug he's doing and talking about reimagining, re-engineering, and rethinking how they're going to rebuild. These are all like euphemisms for basically saying 15-minute city. And I think you all here know about the 15-minute city deal. So basically, what they want to do is turn the Palisades into a giant Section 8 project. Think about the Bed-Stuy projects in New York City or Cabrini Green in Chicago. That's what they're imagining. High density living in Malibu. That's what they want to do. And I'm just interested to see how these leftist Californians are going to respond to their $1 million properties being turned into Bed-Stuy. That's going to be fascinating. How are you going to vote now?
Yeah, and Pacific Palisades area I read, they had changed the zoning to like R2, multifamily, 2 years before the fire. So they had changed the zoning. So now you have, what you have to apply for a variance, or you have to, you know, build multifamily. You can always build a big multifamily and then knock a few walls down, to keep it as one. But they do want 15-minute cities, and then to have so many people there are not going to be able to rebuild.
Sure. They,
They had a lot of equity that went up in smoke. They're now broke. They still own that real estate, and think of as probably hawk to the hilt. So the bank owns it.
Mhm. And you destroy the insurance industry, so they couldn't get insurance out of it. Right?
Yeah,
Insurance companies bailed out of there. It does make you wonder how strategic was that. Boy, that
yeah,
smells awfully similar to that Hawaii event.
sure does to Maui. Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely.
I'm looking forward to some kind of an investigation into that. But one thing I love is Trump going to Newsom and saying basically, we can help you. The other 49 states will be happy to help you, but how about voter ID first?
Yes, and the water all turned back on.
Yep. Yeah.
Says this has to happen.
Right.
Screw that little fish, the little minnow that doesn't even exist.
Yeah.
You know,
So I think California is about to take a right turn. And in fact, that reminds me of one other thing I have to bring up. I looked at this article. Published in USA Watchdog. I saw this just the other day talking about down ballot election fraud. So clearly, in the last election, there was enough
yes,
diligence on the part of conservatives to stop the cheating at the top of the ticket. And clearly, we know they would have cheated themselves back in if they could, but they couldn't. And we know there was 18 million votes that suddenly disappeared from the last time around. But we may not have. This person who wrote this article in USA Watchdog is basically saying, based on his research, we weren't able to be so successful down ballot. And based on his research, he is saying he estimated that we were cheated out of 20 House seats and 5 Senate seats in 2024 because of this massive cheating that they have inside the election system. So, and I thought I had something written here. What was it? So, if you look at state records, it might be anywhere between 2 to 12 million records that are false, completely false. And when you analyze them, you find people are in there that are 150 years old or died 20 years ago or aren't even in the state or we can't find them, right? Or the signatures don't match, right? All of that stuff's still going on. And so research needs to be further done on that. But they are bringing lawsuits that might overturn those elections. Can you imagine how much better off we'd be with 5 more Senate seats and 20 more Democrat and 20 more
oh my
Republican seats?
gosh, oh my. And I'll tell you, we've got the people to be able to do the investigations on this now.
Mhm. Yes.
Before we couldn't. There's still, look at the corrupt judges and whatnot, but the activist judges, they're activists.
Mhm.
So that would be awesome. Look at what we could do.
Yeah.
20
I mean,
more House seats, heavens.
and it's strategic around certain counties to be
Yeah,
local about it.
yeah,
If you were to do that kind of research around Multnomah Lane, Washington counties in Oregon, Pierce County, King County in Washington State. You'd flip the states.
You could absolutely. And this is why with they, Oregon has got the worst super dirty voter rolls. There's people that don't live here. I know of people that, because of my work here in Umatilla County,
Mhm.
especially this past year, it was reported somebody who was registered to vote in Oregon, lives in Washington State, and received a ballot for Oregon and for Washington.
Mhm.
And not just one, not just two, but more. And it wasn't just those that lived in Washington. And so as the chair of Umatilla County Republicans, which I'm not now, but I was,
Mhm.
I am happy with retirement, but there I had PCPs that said, Sonny, this is what I found. This is what I found. And I said, okay, just keep track of that. We're going to talk with our elections about this, let them know. And this is the problem. By having dirty voter rolls, we are not having lawful elections, 100% guaranteed.
And I love the fact that we're now positioned to go after this
Yeah.
stuff. Those kids that work for DOGE, they got jobs for life.
Oh my gosh.
We could get more of those whiz kids in this at the state level. It'd be a pretty amazing thing. Just pick out, 4 or 5 counties in all the blue states. That's pretty much all you need to do.
Something that Trump said the other day, he says, we started with 4. And then it was 12, 6, 12. He goes, now it's over 100. People are calling us and going, I want to help. He goes, and these are
Yeah.
smart people, like 160 IQ people
Mhm.
that want to help. And it's so refreshing to hear that. Well, Thursday, he is going to give a press conference, and Trump is an update on Doge and what's going on. So he's going to be doing that on Thursday.
Mhm. Well,
That will be good to see because, like you mentioned, that or somebody did that, it's not getting out. The people that watch CNN are not getting what's actually happening. They're not believing. It was a comment. They're not believing what is coming out. Well, I did see, I don't remember what channel I was watching, but they did a segment that in this past day, it was a couple days ago,
Mhm.
CNN and MSNBC and those other networks that I don't watch had only given Trump 6 seconds.
Yeah.
6 seconds. And it wasn't anything good. They are not telling the truth. They're trying to keep people snookered. But
Mhm.
because we do have so many alternative medias now,
Oh,
it's
it's
hard. It's hard to keep that lie
and this is the thing.
going.
I suspect that there is not only is their target audience dropping, and because they're just losing the hand over fist, but the ones that are remaining, I bet, are all over the age of 65, because the data pretty much shows that the weakest, which is amazing to me, but it's
Yeah.
true. Trump's weakest demographic is people over 65, and it's really strong in people who are young, which bodes well for us because those are the ones that
Yes.
are around in 10 or 20 years. But the beautiful thing about that age group, they're not watching CNN and MSNBC and ABC and all. They're
I
not watching
know.
TV. They're all on this puppy, which
Yes.
means they're going to be on the rumbles and they're going to be on the podcasts and
Yeah.
they're going to be getting real news. And they're the ones who are being harmed the most by this stuff because they're the ones who can't find a job. They're the ones who get out of college $100,000 in debt and can't find a job. They're the ones who are getting hosed by this stuff. They're the ones that you get out with a degree in software engineering or something and discover that all the jobs are going to Indians who will work for like a quarter of what you work because
Yeah.
they immigrated here. They're the ones who are getting hosed by this, and they see it, and it's great to see that they're going to wake up. So CNN and whatever, you just do what you got to do, and we'll just keep winning.
Absolutely. Hey, I've got a couple of good news things.
Mm-hmm.
And one is the federal judge that had actually issued a temporary hold on the program, the buyout program, has allowing administration buyout program to continue. That happened today.
Mhm.
And so that's a good thing. It was a temporary pause. And so I can't just say, well, that must have been an activist judge, because it's all moving forward. And that is good. There was something like 60,000 people that were going, we're going to take the buyout program. Actually, at least in this article here, I'm sorry, I misquoted. According to the White House, at least 70,000 federal workers have accepted the buyout offer that came as part of the Fork in the Road plan, allowing employees to take a deferred resignation with months of pay. And I'll tell you, I think that's great. The judge has said, okay, let's move on. And this one is even nicer. I think, no, I don't know about nicer, but it's wonderful. The First Lady, our beautiful, classy First Lady, has announced the reopening of White House tours.
Wow.
Public tours of the historic residence will resume this month on February 25th.
How about that?
Yeah.
And what you just said made me think of what a poignant moment it was when Trump and Musk were in the White House, and they're sitting behind the desk taking questions. And I think it was Elon Musk's kid was like just being the rambunctious boy in the White House, and it's very reminiscent, if you all recall, when Kennedy was president, and his son, I think it was JFK Jr. and Carolyn were crawling all over the office, right? I mean, America loved that. It was a personal president who was a real human being who could talk to reporters and you can relate to. And we have that again.
Yeah,
Um,
we
it,
do.
it was pretty incredible to see.
Yes, it was. And he for 4 years old, little X, I thought handled all of that really well, because to look on the other side, that was a wall of journalists with cameras,
Mhm.
and at one point it kind of looked like he was going like this, mimicking, what a photographer holding their camera. And it is nice to see it's normalizing. Children are okay to be around and to be in there. He's in his cute little suit and a little look like camel hair jacket on and coat, and
Plus, the
just
left hates kids. They want to kill them all. So it's
yes,
just nice to
right.
see kids. It must have killed them to have to like videotape a kid. We can't have any of those around.
Yeah, absolutely. So, hey, I wanted to let everybody know I'm not going to be here on Friday. Friday is Valentine's Day, and I'm taking the night off.
You get a
So
night off? I didn't know you
I'm
got that.
taking the night off. You have to take it.
All right.
Since this
Your
is a
husband.
volunteer program, I can.
So is hubby doing the right thing?
So I'm going to take the night off,
Mhm.
and I look forward to a very nice evening with family. My husband, of course, as well. But I just want to kind of give that to our family.
Well, you know what? I better step it up then. The pressure's on
Yes,
now. I guess an evening at Dairy Queen's not going to cut it.
it might tonight, but not on Valentine's.
But not on Valentine's. Got it. What can you say?
So I wish everybody a thank you so much for joining us. And Thursday, Trump's going to have a press conference about what's going on tomorrow with Doge. And stay tuned, because it is all changing so quickly. It's wonderful.
Pedal to the metal, gang. Keep on winning. The game is not over. We won the battle, but the war is still on.
Yes, yes, where we've looks like it's forming up to be quite the A team happening, fighting for our country, fighting for our nation.
Absolutely.
Have a good night, everybody,
Good night, everybody.
and happy Valentine's Day early.